With the ever-changing environment that we currently live in and the pressure to create a better future for the next generations, I thought it would be beneficial, or at least in my opinion, very important, to create a video of words and vocabulary related to climate change, global warming, environmental issues. Maybe you are passionate about this subject, maybe you talk about this with your friends, maybe you work in an industry that is going to be affected by the change of the climate, or maybe you are hoping to work in an industry that is preparing for a more sustainable future. Either way, I'm sure there will be something in this video that can be of help to you. Some of the words will be new, some will be words you already know. And just to introduce myself, my name is Catherine. I'm a business English teacher and I post 2 to 3 videos per week. So subscribe if you are trying to improve your professional and workplace English. Now, I wanted to record this video outside so that we have the environmental feel, but unfortunately it's really raining outside today. So if you can hear that in the background of the audio, my apologies. And without any further hesitation, let's get started. So first of all, we should discuss global warming versus climate change. These two phrases are used interchangeably. Now, interchangeably means to be replacement of each other, to be synonyms of each other, to mean the same thing, but can use as and when you want. But actually, that's incorrect. They do not mean the same thing. They are just related to the same topic. Global warming, as the name suggests, refers to a temperature increase. The world or the planet or Earth is getting hotter. However, climate change refers to the change in weather. So this can be heating up, cooling down, snow melting, winter lasting longer, summer starting 2 months late, or as we've seen the past 3 years, snow every February, March time in London. That's usually unheard of. London is too hot of a city to have snow, but the last 3 years we have had snow in London. Or maybe, for example, this year, spring came, spring started, all the flowers came up from the ground, and then snow came, and all the flowers died, and spring hadn't yet started. So any changes you see in the climate, the environment, the temperature, these are all related to climate change, not necessarily global warming. They are both caused by the same thing, which I will get into later in the video. But just be aware when you're talking about global warming, it is the heating up of the planet. Climate change is any related changes. Increase and decrease may be very easy for you, but from here on out, I will be using these phrases a lot. So I wanted to put them in here to remind you before we continue with the video. So to increase something is to improve in value or grow in number, whereas to decrease is the opposite, to go down in value or reduce in number. So if something is improving or getting bigger, or there is more of something, it is increasing. If something is reducing in the amount, or there are less, or it is getting colder, we say reducing. So let's move on to a more difficult one, emission or emissions, plural. The emission refers to the output of something, typically gas or radiation, and you will often hear people talking about carbon emissions or trying to reduce their carbon emissions. So in the briefest way possible, if there are any scientists watching this, I'm sure they could give a much better explanation than I could. Carbon is needed for every living thing to exist, whether they absorb it or give out, produce carbon. So for example, trees absorb carbon and they give out oxygen. People, humans, absorb oxygen and they give out carbon. So it's like a circle. And we need this carbon, but the problem at the moment is we are overproducing carbon because everything we do creates carbon emissions. So for example, cars, planes, trains, cutting down trees, creating plastic, burning fossil fuels, all of these things create carbon. And at the moment, we are creating more than we can absorb. So these negative carbon creations, we refer to these as emissions, carbon emissions. My car produces too many emissions. Flying short distances produces a lot of carbon emission. Sustainable. This is a good word and a favorite topic of mine because people love to use this incorrectly, especially in the marketing industry or in the fashion industry. Sustainable means that a process can pretty much go on forever as long as the product or material needed to create it is being made faster than we can use it. It doesn't mean the same as recycled or eco-friendly, which many people use it as meaning eco-friendly. They will say, this is sustainable, this is eco-friendly. They do not mean the same thing. Sustainable means the product needed to create an item grows at a faster rate than we can use it. So for example, cutting down trees to make homes and products, this is not sustainable because it takes about 10 years for a tree to mature. Of course, it depends on the tree, but on average, about 10 years. And the amount of wood we use every year is more than the amount of trees we can grow. However, bamboo, for example, needs less water, less land, and takes a much quicker time to grow than a tree does. So making something out of bamboo could be considered sustainable because in the time it took you to make a home out of bamboo, you've already regrown all of that bamboo for your next home. Another example, solar panels. As far as we know, the sun is not going to stop being the sun anytime soon. It's pretty much predicted the sun will always be there in our future. And the amount of energy you can create from solar panels, obviously depending which country you are in and where you are located, but you can produce more energy from solar panels than you have the ability to use. So this could be considered sustainable. This is a sustainable source of energy because the sun will always be there. It will never run out, and we can produce solar energy again and again and again. It is also important to note that sustainable can be used to describe an action unrelated to eco-friendly, and it just means the same. It means that the input is larger than the output. So for example, if I say working 65 hours a week is unsustainable, what I mean is I can't do this forever because I will be so tired, so exhausted. I won't be able to keep doing 65 hours a week. Ecology and ecosystem. Now, ecology and ecosystem refers to how all living things interact with each other and how they interact with the environment and their behaviors within that environment. The ecosystem is the name for this, the name of this process of living things interacting with each other. And ecology is the study. It's the form of biology that studies these ecosystems. The reason these two words are so important when talking about climate change is that in order to have a well-working, perfectly functioning ecosystem, everything within that ecosystem needs to be equal and healthy and working properly. So for example, if we overfish tuna, there is no more tuna for the dolphins to eat, and the dolphins start to eat smaller other fish, meaning they are taking the food away from another type of species, another type of fish. Or, for example, if we kill all the flowers, there is now nowhere for the bees to hide or sleep or collect pollen, which means less insects, less birds, and less smaller animals have safe places to hide and forage. That's a good word, forage, unrelated to climate change, but related to this specific section. So forage means to search for the products or materials needed to create food. It's not hunting because you don't kill anything in the process of doing it, but you find these things in nature. So for example, foraging for berries or foraging for wood to make a fire to cook your fish. You will often hear ecosystem be talked about as something we need to protect. We need to plant more trees in cities. We need to protect the coral reefs. Think of the ecosystem as the lungs of the world. We cannot exist if the ecosystem doesn't exist as it is now. You take one thing out of that equation and everything changes. Circular economy. Now I'm going to start by explaining the linear economy, the idea of a linear economy to you, because if you can understand linear economy, then it will be easier for you to understand a circular economy. So a linear economy is the one we currently live in. Think of a line. We buy something new, we use it, we throw it away. There's a line, start, a middle, and a finish. Now the problem with this is that it creates a lot of waste and energy and emissions. There's that word again, remember emissions, and encourages us to keep buying more new products. A circular economy is a circle. We buy something, we use it or recycle it or reuse it or use it for something else, use it for another purpose. But the circle starts again with the same product. Think of a candle in a glass jar, for example. When the candle is burned and there's no more wax left in the jar, we can use the jar to put flowers in as a decorative item, maybe even as a drinking glass. Or another good example, secondhand clothes. If I haven't worn a denim jacket in months and I want to get rid of it, so I donate it to a secondhand shop or a charity selling clothing, someone else comes along, sees my jacket and thinks, I want to wear that. And they now wear it and use it. Once they are finished with it, they also donate it back to a second-hand shop. So you are creating a circle. The products are not being thrown away, and you are not constantly buying new products. You are buying products that already exist, or recycling something you have previously used so you don't have to throw it away. You don't have to waste it. Carbon neutral. I'm sure you've heard this often. Carbon neutral. Everyone is aiming to be carbon neutral. All governments nowadays are talking about being carbon neutral. But what does it actually mean? Well, remember the emissions definition and the production of carbon dioxide. Everything we do creates carbon. The idea of being carbon neutral means the amount of carbon you produce is equal to the amount of carbon you are absorbing or taking out of the environment. So, for example, England says it wants to be carbon neutral by 2035. This means that the amount of carbon emissions produced by cars, factories, transport, manufacturing processes is equal to the amount of carbon that England's trees and greenery, oceans and forests are taking out of our atmosphere. We are not producing more than we can remove. Is this possible? I don't know, but it is certainly something to aim for. At this current moment, the only country that is carbon neutral is Costa Rica, and they have managed this by reducing the amount of cars allowed on the island, protecting their ecosystem. Remember that word, ecosystem. Not allowing too many people in one area of the island, protecting their tourist hotspots, and controlling the amount of visitors that are allowed to visit each year. Now, if you work in marketing or advertising, you probably already know this word and are aware of greenwashing. It's a relatively new term, and it refers to brands or companies using environmental issues to promote their product. This is good, right? Yes, of course it's good, but greenwashing, the washing part of it, refers to it not being 100% true or accurate. For example, let's say I invent a new water bottle and I say, this is made of recycled plastic, drink fresh water while feeling good about your impact on the planet. That sounds fantastic, but when we look closer, only 20% of the plastic I have used is recycled and 80% is new plastic. This would be considered greenwashing because I haven't said that in my promotional ad or marketing. I've only talked about the recycled part of the water bottle. Or let's even take the recycled logo. In Europe, we see this sign everywhere, but actually anyone can use this sign regardless of whether their packaging is recycled or not. So not all products with this logo can be recycled. A good example and a fun fact is the Coke bottle that you see. The lid and the plastic bottle cannot be recycled together. They have to be separated. However, they do not say that on the packaging because that would be too long and too boring and too difficult for the customers to do. But yes, you believe the entire bottle is recyclable because of this logo. In fact, it's not. When a company uses eco-friendly phrases that are only partly true or not true at all, this is called greenwashing. Single use, I think this was the phrase of 2020. Single use gloves, single use masks, single use everything. Well, as the name suggests, this refers to using something only once, one time. Then it needs to be thrown away. Now, this is important in the medical field, research centers, laboratories. But in our daily life, we should really be avoiding single-use plastics, and companies and brands should be making packaging without single-use plastics. Why do we still use them then if they are so bad for the environment? Well, they are probably the cheapest option. However, in order to create our circular economy, the one you've just learned about, we want our products to be made of something that can be recycled or reused or biodegradable. A really good example is when you buy soap in the supermarket. Some soaps come wrapped in plastic and some come in a cardboard sleeve. Both packagings do exactly the same thing, but one of them can be recycled and one of them cannot. Greenhouse gases. Now, this is a bit of a complicated one to explain. So the world has a thin layer of air protecting it from things coming in, protecting our atmosphere going out. However, as the planet gets hotter, this thin layer of air acts like a greenhouse. Think of a greenhouse with tomatoes in it. It gets very, very hot and the tomatoes grow lovely and big. But with our planet, this thin layer of air is keeping all the gases or the emissions inside and making the temperature heat up, which is causing us a lot of problems. So the greenhouse gases refers to these gases that are creating this hotter temperature and being kept in by our greenhouse. They are the same as emissions because the number one greenhouse gas is carbon dioxide, but emissions refers to the actual creation of these gases, whereas greenhouse gases is just their name. It's just what we call them, greenhouse gases. So you wouldn't say the car produces greenhouse gases, you would say the car produces carbon emissions or harmful emissions. ESG. Now, ESG is something you may not come across, but I have included it because many businesses and organizations are now hiring ESG specialists to help them with their business and their environmental impact. So I wanted to include it just in case either A, you work in this field, or B, someone in your office works in this field. So ESG stands for environmental, social, and governance, or sometimes corporate governance. And a person who works in this field is someone that is very highly skilled in their area of business. So it could be finance, economy, politics, but they are helping corporations improve their environmental impact, their social impact, and the reputation of the business. This is not a new job. This has been around for years, but it is becoming more popular for these ESG specialists to be hired as more and more businesses are worried about their impact on the environment. The last one today is a phrase you will hear often, doing your part, or doing my part, or doing their part. This refers to the fact that we are all part of the same ecosystem, same planet, and we're all working together, or should be working together. And therefore, we are all part of a bigger picture. So doing your part is the idea that you are making small changes or making small efforts to help improve the environment and the future and be part of the bigger picture. For example, if I reduce the amount of car journeys I take and I start cycling or walking to work 3 times a week, you can say I am doing my part for the environment. What have you done to make sure you are doing your part? Or what is your country doing to make sure they are doing their part for a better future and to decrease the effects of climate change? Let me know in the comments. As I said, this is a difficult video, a difficult topic, but it is one I really enjoy talking about. And I think you will start to see more and more conversations about climate change and global warming in the workplace, because it really is starting to affect us and our jobs and our industries. So it's important to have this vocabulary so you can join in when you need to. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you for watching and thank you for your support, and I will see you in our next lesson. Goodbye!